dreamer, and everybody's a star.
Well, it's that time of year again. While we won't be strolling on Hollywood Boulevard, we will be strolling along West Street and Main Street in Annapolis for the 12th Annual Annapolis Film Festival. From April 4th through the 7th, you can enjoy more than 70 films, Q&A sessions with filmmakers, panels, coffee chats, and yes, plenty of parties as well. Tickets and passes are on sale right now at AnnapolisFilmFestival.org. But right now, we're going to give you a taste of things to come as we chat with the movers, the shakers, directors, and producers for the 12th Annual Annapolis Film Festival.
That's why she tried to be so hard.
Well, welcome to Lois Lipman, who is the director of a film that will be showing at the Annapolis Film Festival. And of course, the Annapolis Film Festival is coming in April 4th through the 7th. And I am really excited to talk to Lois because I love to learn what I don't know. And she is the director of a film called First We Bombed New Mexico. How are you today?
Hey, John, I'm really well, and I'm just thrilled that we're going to discuss our film.
You know, I've got to say that this was somewhat of a, did this really happen moment for me.
Yeah.
I find that as I get older, I mean, honestly, I just discovered Juneteenth probably about 4 years ago. The story is a story about the federal government testing the nuclear bomb at Trinity, which is in New Mexico, causing generations and generations of damage to the Native Americans and the Latinos that live down there. I mean, how did you find out about it, and how did we never hear about this when we were growing up?
Well, that's a great question. And, John, I was as stunned as you expressed just now when I learned this. I had moved back to New Mexico, and I'd been there for a while. I'd been working in London before that as a journalist. I was in love with New Mexico, and somehow I heard about that the world's first nuclear bomb had been detonated in my beautiful state, as close as 12 miles from residents, U.S. citizens. So the U.S. government had detonated its bomb and bombed its citizens, and had left fallout there that covered the land with what looked like snow and caused generations of rare and awful cancers that continue today. How did we not know about it? I read original documents, and I know that General Groves, who was in charge of the military operation, the bombing of Hiroshima and the creation of the Manhattan Project, the nuclear bomb, Oppenheimer's bomb. Of course, he didn't want anybody to know about this test because he wanted to do a surprise attack on Japan. He also says in his documents that he was worried about litigation. He didn't want there to be, legal actions for doing this. And so he just kept it quiet, and nobody ever came back to check on residents or care for them.
Well, your film is about a cancer survivor, Tina Cordova, who has really sort of taken the, in an Aaron Brockovich kind of a way, taken the bull by the horns to bring this to light and to get some justice for the people that have been affected for generations. I mean, it shouldn't be that much of a problem to get. I mean, we're talking about reparations for slavery. We're talking about everything. We've known the damage that nuclear can cause forever. And you said 12 miles?
Yes. Isn't that shocking? I don't think anybody wants to pay the consequences of causing such horrific damage.
Well, how did you sniff this all out and get connected with Tina?
I heard about this story. I, by happenstance, met somebody there was a small team that was trying to make a film about this, but they didn't have any resources or film experience. And I was so interested when I heard about this. I went and volunteered with the person who was leading this. It was a journalist from the New Mexican newspaper who, when he found out about this incident, the bomb, and that all these downwinders are dying and losing family members, he was so horrified. He traveled a couple of miles south to where these downwinders had gathered. He interviewed everybody, and it was a full page article in the newspaper in 2010, and that was 65 years after this detonation. So the first time anything had been written about it was 65 years later. Can you believe it? So I had worked for CBS 60 Minutes all around the world, out of London, and for the BBC on documentaries, and I passionately care about social justice and using my skills to try to make a difference. So I volunteered to help on this for a couple years, and then they all kind of gave up and said they just couldn't do it. It costs a lot of money to make a film, and for me, I was motivated to make a documentary at the very, very highest level because we need to make a difference. We needed to win awards. We needed to get seen all across the country in film festivals and get distribution so that the people finally know what happened. And they put pressure on our legislators to give some compensation and an apology to the victims.
Obviously, long overdue. Do we have any idea how many people this has affected? I mean, you said 65 years until we even heard about it for the first time. And I mean, that's easily 2 generations.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any concept of how many people are affected in this?
Well, I know that Tina has gathered health questionnaires she's gathered 1,000, and everybody had family members who were impacted. So there would be, I believe, several thousand people that were impacted. The loss is just, it spills over and continues for many generations.
Wow. That's what I love about film festivals. And I guess to a degree about screening or streaming services and everything else, because not everything can get on the AMC big screen. It just is impossible. And this is where you can find these stories that do need to be told that we don't know about. And are you going to be coming to Annapolis with this film, right?
Yeah, I am. We're screening. It's a very early hour. We're screening at 10 a.m. on Friday and Saturday mornings.
Okay, yeah, and that's going to be at Maryland Hall in the Bowen Theater, which is on the lower level of the building.
Yeah.
And this is a film that is going to, I have not seen it. I have seen the trailer, but I imagine everybody's going to walk out, be scratching their heads, and this is going to be a conversation starter for 600 people that are watching this film each showing. Really scratch your head and you go, how the hell did this happen here?
Yeah. You know, we have now screened at, I think, 6 festivals, and we get standing ovations. We win awards everywhere. And I hope that we do get a theatrical release as well. And everywhere people scratch their heads, and they're angry too. And they want to know what they can do to help. It does, I feel, an emotional reaction at every screening with the audience. We're looking forward to showing in Annapolis. We just screened in D.C., and, you know, I think Annapolis and D.C. are very, very important places to screen because we want to educate the legislators.
We all know they all need some education. That's for sure. No argument from me here, all the way from our little town all the way up to Washington, 20 miles to our west. Well, I'll tell you what, is there any chance that I might be able to talk to Tina Cordova, who is the subject of First We Bombed New Mexico?
Yeah, of course. I'll give you her number, and I'll tell you, you're in for a treat. Tina's in.
I will absolutely get in touch with her and get the other half of the story, I guess it is. But I am so looking forward to seeing this at the Annapolis Film Festival. Again, the film festival runs April 4th through the 7th. The showings for First We Bombed New Mexico will be Friday, April 5th at 10 a.m. at Maryland Hall and Saturday, April 6th at Maryland Hall, also at 10 a.m. Get there early. I mean, get your passes. You can get them at AnnapolisFilmFestival.org. Get your passes, get your tickets, and I'm looking forward to meeting you when you come into town. And I'm even looking more forward, no offense to you, to talk to Tina.
My mom said something very profound one time. She said, "Do you think if my husband and I had known that our kids were going to get poisoned, we would have stayed here? We would have done everything we could to get ourselves out of here." But no one ever told us.
Bombs were developed here, built here, and researched here, are stored here, and then they're buried here.
The U.S. government tested the first ever atomic bomb at the Trinity site in south central New Mexico. We were
Hello.
Hi, is this Tina?
It is.
Hey.
It is.
Hey, Tina, my name is John Fernay. I'm with the Annapolis Film Festival, and I was speaking with your director, Lois Lipman, this morning, and she sold you out and gave me your phone number. And we wanted to talk to you about First We Bombed New Mexico. Do you have a few moments?
You bet I do, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity.
Oh, I am so excited to speak with you, but also to see this film, which is coming to the Annapolis Film Festival, which tickets and passes are available now, AnnapolisFilmFestival.org. People should know that by now. But First We Bombed New Mexico is going to be screening on Friday, April 5th and Saturday, April 6th, both at 10 a.m., both at Maryland Hall. And this is a film that everybody really should see because it's a travesty what happened, and we've talked with Lois about this. But you are the community organizer and the activist that you're a dog with a bone. You're not letting go.
That's absolutely true. And, I started this work 19 years ago, and Lois has been following us probably for the better part of the last 8 years. And she's followed us all across the country to film, us actually organizing and advocating and fighting and struggling. I mean, Lois has been with us through so many different episodes of what we've been through. And just so that you understand that, I am the fourth generation in my family to have cancer since 1945 when the Trinity bomb was detonated 45 miles from the village I grew up in. And now I have a 24-year-old niece that was diagnosed at the age of 23 with thyroid cancer. She's the fifth generation in our family. So that's the legacy.
I read a little bit about your story, and you remember being at your grandmother's house, and am I going to get the name of the town? Tularosa?
Tularosa, yes.
And her recounting stories of the atomic bomb that was tested 50 miles away from her house.
That's correct. And interestingly enough, what my grandmother said to me was that she remembered the light that it produced because it produced more light than the sun, more light and more heat than the sun, 10,000 times the heat of the sun. And she said she remembered the flash of light and they experienced the blast wave. But what she said affected her the most was it was July, very hot here, no electricity, so no form of air conditioning. And she said, our windows and our doors were left open 24/7 during that time of year to try to cool our homes, and we would hang wet bed sheets in the windows and the doors to create a cool draft. And she said, what I remember the most is that for days afterwards, this white ash fell from the sky and it got on everything. And she said, we would sweep it out and it would be back, and we would sweep it out and it would be back. And she said, it was on everything. She said the whole, everything was coated with it essentially, which is how many people have told me about their recollection from the day of the bomb and in the days afterwards.
Did you live in your grandmom's town too as well, Tularosa, or were you just primarily a visitor there?
Oh, no, I grew up in Tularosa. I lived in Tularosa until I left to go to college. And so I grew up in our little Eden, and I always tell people, Tularosa was an Eden in the middle of the desert because we had year-round running water that flowed from the mountains east of where I lived. There's actually a mountain range there, and the highest peak in that mountain range is 12,000 feet high. It's the highest, most southern peak of the Rockies. And so we had this wonderful, incredible supply of water year-round. And that's how the village was actually developed, because there was a creek that brought water from east of town. And the villagers who first developed the village set up what's called an acequia system, or a ditch system. And we had these open ditches that bordered our property. And so everybody had a garden, and everybody had an orchard, and everybody had, animals that they raised, and the men hunted to supplement. But everything we ate, we produced in 1945. Even when I was born, we still produced a lot of our own food, because that was just the nature of living in rural parts of New Mexico. But in 1945, we had no electricity, no refrigeration, no running water. We collected rainwater. People still use cisterns today in many parts of New Mexico. And so all of that was heavily contaminated as that ash fell from the sky. And it's no wonder we were so overexposed to radiation, just as a matter of how we lived and the nature of the bomb.
We're talking 80 years ago, 1945, almost 80 years ago, and it's still affecting generation after generation. Now, when did people start to question this? I mean, you've said that you've got 4 generations of your family that have cancer?
Well, actually 5 now with my young niece. She's the 5th generation. And, they lied to us in the beginning. They never warned us about this. They never evacuated anyone. And they lied to us. They said an ammunition dump had exploded. And it wasn't until after the bombs were detonated in Japan that they admitted that they had tested the bomb in New Mexico. But they still never explained what exposure to radiation meant, or the harm that it would cause. And it really wasn't until the 1960s and 70s, because there was still testing going on in the United States at the Nevada test site. It was still producing fallout that reached as far as New Mexico and beyond, because they had monitoring stations by then in place that was actually monitoring the radiation. But it wasn't until after people in parts of Utah, downwind of the Nevada test site, started to display cancers in the children, and the animals were dying, and adults were getting cancer in places where we'd never heard or seen these things before, that a conversation started about this across the nation. And, it was a group of women started to ask people to turn over their children's baby teeth as they shed them. And they started checking these baby teeth for strontium, which it's a byproduct of a blast, a bomb, a nuclear device. They started testing these teeth, and they started finding strontium. And so all of a sudden, we now became keenly aware across the country that our children were probably being harmed, that everybody was being harmed. But essentially now we verified it in our children as we turned over our, baby teeth, and they started testing them. And that's how we got the test ban treaty that was signed in 1963 by President Kennedy. It was a remarkable thing. Otherwise, I clearly believe that we would have had ongoing above-ground nuclear testing.
You mentioned the Nevada test site, and there have been reparations and compensation in the billions for the people there. And I remember even listening to a podcast not too long ago about when Las Vegas was being built, and part of the entertainment in Vegas was to sit out by the pool and watch some of the detonations and then testing at Nevada test site. Why have we ignored Trinity?
Well, I always say that's the, $2.6 billion question, because that's how much money has been basically paid in reparations to downwinders of the Nevada test site. But the actual compensation ends right at the Arizona and New Mexico border. As if I say there's a lead curtain there that somehow offered us protection. They compensate people that live 259 miles from the Nevada test site in Winslow, Arizona, but they don't compensate the people in New Mexico that lived literally 12 miles from the test site. We'll never know the answer to the question. We'll never know. But what we do know is that the people from New Mexico have been conspicuously left out. Was there a level of environmental racism associated with this? I don't know. But what I can tell you is New Mexico had 2 U.S. senators, and one of them was exceedingly powerful, and he helped pass the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act and we weren't included. The thing that I think contributes most to this, though, John, is that New Mexico is home still to this day to two national nuclear labs, Los Alamos Labs and Sandia Labs. And I really do believe that it was difficult for our leaders to maximally fund those labs and then hold out their hand and say something like, but give us a little something to take care of all the people who are sick and dying. I think that was a really hard and difficult ask. And so we have been basically ignored for 79 years, and our government has looked away, and literally they came here, invaded our lands and our lives, destroyed our environment, and left. No one even stuck around 24 hours after the bomb was detonated. And, you know, it's unconscionable. It's so wrong what's happened here, because this is multi-generational, and my family's not unique. We know of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families that are displaying 4 and 5 generations of cancer now in New Mexico. This isn't going away for us.
Is it going away for anybody?
Well, let me just tell you, unless you know about the nature of an atomic bomb, it's hard to understand how the effects linger for so long. But let me describe that. First of all, the bomb at Trinity was a plutonium-based bomb, and plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. At least 10 pounds of plutonium never fissioned as part of the bomb at Trinity. It then became dispersed all over the Tularosa Basin, never to be abated or addressed. So there could be ongoing exposures to people for 24,000 years. We have other radioactive isotopes that are also produced by a blast like this, an atomic blast. We have strontium and cesium, and they have half-lives in about the 30-year range. But we also in New Mexico have this vast history of uranium mining. They abandoned 1,000 uranium mine and mill sites across the Navajo Nation, Laguna, and Acoma Pueblo. And these sites, they extracted 32 million tons of uranium. These sites are Superfund sites that have never been addressed. There's a site, it was the largest open pit mine in the world at one time. It's basically 30 miles the way the crows fly from Albuquerque. And uranium has an even longer half-life. So we don't know what we're exposed to. We don't know what our ongoing exposures are. We know that radioactive iodine, there are some isotopes that have a short half-life, some that have an exceedingly long half-life. We'll never know what we continue to be exposed to today. But aside from that, our genetics have been forever changed. And we pass that on. And so when does that wash out? You know, I'll never live long enough to see that happen. And we literally live in fear of when is it going to be our turn? Because we don't ask if we're going to get cancer, we ask when it's going to be our turn. Everybody around us has been sick. And, you know, we know about the physiological medical effects and the disease processes that result. But people never talk about the emotional, psychological, or financial impact that this has had on us. But I can tell you that it has been enormous. And I clearly believe that our government is shockingly immoral when they go around saying that it's going to cost too much to take care of us, because we have spent something like $10 trillion on our nuclear program since its inception. But all we've ever spent on downwinders is $2.6 billion. It's minuscule. And that is what we're told regularly now. It's going to cost too much to take care of you all.
So we screwed you, we killed you, and we're just walking away from it.
Exactly. And we've destined future generations to the same outcomes. You know, I tell people all the time, our democracy is somewhat based on law and order. And I couldn't go out recklessly harming people in my community, and then when I'm held to account, say something like, I don't want to put my resources towards that because it's going to cost too much. You couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. And it's shockingly immoral that the U.S. government thinks that they can do that. We were American citizens, hardworking, tax-paying, patriotic American citizens. You know, New Mexico has a history of service that is above and beyond most states. In World War II, New Mexico per capita had more people enlist, more people die. My grandfather's buried in Belgium. We bought more war bonds. We are American patriots. And to be kicked in the teeth by our government when we're simply saying, account for this, step up and take responsibility for the reckless harm that you have done to our communities, and that, like I said, you destine our children and grandchildren.
And their grandchildren and their grandchildren. I mean,
and on and on.
How does somebody, I mean, I've got a couple strange questions, but how does somebody living in the Tularosa Basin or in Tularosa, it's got to be horrible to have a child, to know that you may be, just because of where you've chosen to live or grow up, or you may be passing cancer on to them. I
regularly say I had my son when I was quite young and before I was aware of this. I was not fully aware of this. I have a degree in biology, by the way, and chemistry. And I became fully aware of this, and my son was already born. But I tell people all the time, I don't think I could have children now. And this is a common discussion that I hear people have all the time about how they don't feel all that comfortable having children. My son has the genetics on both sides of his family. He lost both of his grandfathers to cancer, one to pancreatic cancer, which is extremely rare, but I know handfuls of people that have had it in my little village of 3,000. My dad died from having cancer of his tongue. My dad didn't drink much, didn't smoke, would never put chewing tobacco in his mouth, and had no viruses. But he was a 4-year-old child drinking mass quantities of fresh cow's milk, drinking water from the cistern adjacent to their home, eating fresh fruits and vegetables of all kinds, and eating chickens' eggs as fast as the chicken laid them. And we didn't know any different. And my dad developed cancer of the tongue twice, and it wasn't metastatic. And they knew that because they could tell on a cellular level. And when I asked the doctors, how did this happen to him? He has no risk factors. And they said, it doesn't happen, Tina, but we see it all the time in New Mexico. And it's just, like I said earlier, this is the legacy. This is the legacy. I was 39 years old when I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and the first thing they asked me was, when were you exposed to radiation? They asked if I worked with radioactive isotopes, that I had a lot of x-rays. So when they asked me about that, I said no, no, and no. But I grew up 45 miles from the Trinity test site, and I really do believe that was my exposure. And now my niece has thyroid cancer.
You've talked about being the patriots and being the U.S. citizens and everything else. I mean, and this is primarily Hispanics as well as Native Americans, I'm presuming, in that area?
Yes, and the history of New Mexico is we're the only state that has always been, from its inception, a minority-majority state. So more than 50%, well more than 50% of the people that live here and have always lived here are people of color, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, and essentially we've lived here for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The oldest footprints in the world are at White Sands National Monument, which interfaces with the Trinity site. So I always tell people, these are the people that have lived here forever. And yes, we are, people of color, Mexican American, Native American.
Where do we go from here?
Well, we can no longer accept the idea that our government can get away with something so egregious, something so damaging. And where we go from here now is that everybody who is inclined to help us reach out immediately to their members of Congress and let them know, especially in the House, especially House members, let them know that this is of critical importance to you. I say all the time, once you know this history, once you have heard this, once you realize this is all true, then if you remain complacent, you're complicit, you're part of the problem. And we need people to join with us. We need people to speak up. We need Congress, the House primarily now, to understand that we've got to pass this bill. Our program, the RECA program, will sunset in June of 2024. And if that happens, they will never reinstitute that program. And many people across the American West and Guam, and the post-71 uranium workers and the people of New Mexico who so deserve justice will never see justice, will never see assistance, will be left here to languish like we have for 79 years with this horrible legacy.
Wow. So the clock is ticking. June of 24. That's a couple months away.
That's right, John. And I also think it's absolute torture for them to allow us to wonder if they're going to extend the program. You know, they may not expand it. They may not see before June to expand it. But if they don't at least extend it, keep the program going in its current format, and it expires, like I said, we will never see justice.
Well, I will recommend everybody put this down on your calendar, April 5th and April 6th at the Annapolis Film Festival, 10 a.m. both mornings, so you've got a choice at Maryland Hall. You can learn a lot more out of the film. You can check out the film's website, which is called firstwebombednewmexico.com. Very long, but very simple. And there's plenty of resources on there. And if you would like to get into the weeds a little bit, you can Google Tina Cordova, Cordova, and there is a wealth of information about what's happened out in New Mexico to these people that has just been ignored. And this is something that's happening here in Annapolis at the Annapolis Film Festival. I do recommend everybody go to see that. And I know that Lois said she was going to be here. Are you going to be here as well?
Well, John, guess what? We have 2 film festivals the same weekend. So Lois is going to cover Annapolis. The other film festival is right here in New Mexico in Las Cruces. So I'm going to cover the Las Cruces. We're going to split up. Normally we're both at the same location, but that weekend I won't be able to go to Annapolis. But I would encourage everybody to go. And I would also like to say that we have a website too. It's Trinity Downwinders. It's very simple, trinitydownwinders.com. And people can go there. They'll find easy links also to reach out to their members of Congress. And we very much appreciate you giving us this kind of support, John. It's very necessary, and we're grateful for it.
We need to see this film. We need to get something done. Tina Cordova, thank you for your time. Thank you for telling your story and the story of your family and the story of your people. I am glad to hear that you were able to kick cancer's ass. I'm horrified to hear that you have a niece that's 20 some odd years old and now going through the same battle that you went through a while ago. First We Bomb New Mexico, AnnapolisFilmFestival.org. And Tina, thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Take care, and we appreciate your support.
And remember, passes and tickets for the Annapolis Film Festival are available right now at AnnapolisFilmFestival.org. I've got mine, you get yours, and I'll see you at the movies.
It doesn't matter who you are. There are stars in every city, in every house and on every street.